YouTubers, and welcome to another video. Today's video will be doing a gaming review. Now before I get on to the video, I just want to address to some of my fans out there who might be questioning this, or let's just say to all of my fans, because they'll probably be questioning this. Why is there a microphone here? Well, I'm just going to address this, that I've got this microphone for better sounding for the time being. It's not the greatest microphone that I picked up, because as I said in a earlier channel's update, that I'll be doing a podcast later on in a few months. At that time, I'll be getting a better, more upgraded microphone. But this, for the time being, it's a great for sounding here or there. Sound better, look better, both of them, both sound and look. This right here is a wireless microphone, which is connected to Bluetooth, so that's a good thing because I can move it around, I can play with it. It's not like one of those microphones that you attach to your camera and now it's stuck with the camera and frozen there. This is wireless Bluetooth, so if any of you are thinking of getting a microphone, if you're starting out and you don't have the money, go wired. Because wireless is usually double the price of wired. And something else, this is custom too, because the on the air part was not part of the microphone. I added it on. Because when I saw the one with on the air, it had the lights on it. Like, you know those lights on the letters here? They would light up. I spent less to custom build this part myself. So, now that I've addressed the microphone, let's get going to a gaming review. Now, today's game will be going to the Atari 2600 again, and we'll be reviewing a game that some of you will know because it's very well known, and some of you will say the #1 shittiest game to be in existence, but it's well worth their game review, and that is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Now, E.T. was only released on the Atari 2600, which then later on for the Atari 400 they made a sequel, but it was a completely different game. Not many people wanted to buy it because of how bad Extraterrestrial was, so the sales for the E.T. on the Atari 400 plummeted, which now it's considered a very rare game on the 400, but it's a different game, and that's for a whole nother review for a whole nother day. Today we'll be sticking with E.T. Extraterrestrial. Now, the whole premise of this game is very simple. As the movie implies, E.T. phone home. You're supposed to find pieces of your phone, make sure the FBI doesn't catch you, and if the FBI catches you, you go to jail and start all over again. You have set amount of steps. You have 1,000 steps to make, you have 1,000 steps to make, and within those steps, you have to collect your phone parts for your phone, and if you don't within the steps, game over, start all over again. Now, if you collect them, E.T. phone home, and he goes home, and game, you win. And every time the FBI catches you, you lose 100 steps. So that's pretty bad to be caught by the FBI. Now, problem, every time you spot the FBI, he runs twice the speed that E.T. runs. So you better make sure you're on the corner of the page, or corner of the screen, and the FBI is on the other end of the screen, so you can go to the next screen so he doesn't show up. Now, every different parts of the game, like level, well, it's all one level, but different like parts. Like when you go left, right, up, down, they'll take you to different like areas. All of them have like 3 or 4 black holes that you fall into. Now, those black holes could evidently lead you to the piece of the phone, nothing, or a random flower, which the flower is the most fucked up thing they could ever add to the game. And I say this why? Because of one reason only. You find a flower, you have to put your neck up, which is already one step because you moved your neck. Flower gets activated, a little music goes dun, 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 dun. Pretty lame. You waste about 3 steps, and then you want to go back up from the hole that you fell. that's about 50 steps just to get out of the hole. So you waste about 53 steps for activating a flower that does nothing. This game is the very, very historical game for one reason only. Because of how bad it failed, and one of the reasons that we had the video game crash in '83. Now, there is a myth which was debunked that there's a landfill in the middle of New Mexico that they buried millions of copies of E.T. Now, they made a movie called Atari Game Over last year, well, a year and a half ago, which they made, and they were talking about how the video game crash happened because Atari released E.T. and so forth and so on, and then they were starting to show footage of people digging him out, and there was about 1,000 to 2,000 people waiting in line to grab copies of them. If you look very closely, more than just E.T. carts were there. They threw out every single Atari game because Atari wanted to go out of the video game market because they wanted to start developing games for other companies. So what ended up happening? They buried it. They blamed E.T. because a lot of people decided to return their copy of E.T. when it came out in '82. Or they didn't sell well, so they decided to point fingers. Now here's something else. If you go back to the newspapers of 1983, which I don't have because it's from 1983, not easy to find, but they do have a couple of them in random museums. If you look closely at it, it says Atari landfill created. Bunch of Atari games have been buried there due to the video game crash. They don't specify E.T., so the myth has been debunked after the release of the Atari Game Over movie. But this was a huge contribution because they said because of how bad the sales were on this game, they decided to do that. They decided to bury a bunch of Atari games. Now, E.T. was a Universal movie. So how did Atari get the rights to it? Universal Studios and Steven Spielberg came up with the idea that so many kids loved this movie. They pitched the idea for a video game. Atari came out to Universal and said, hey, how about this? You come with us, we'll make the game. You guys just come up with a concept, we'll make the game. So their concept was because the movie is about phoning home and going home. At the end of the movie, E.T. dies. At the end of the game, E.T. doesn't die. E.T. actually phones home. So they tried to put that into a concept to phone home. Problem? Atari did very little research on what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And at the time, they didn't know that people really loved Universal movies, but wasn't too keen on Atari games because it looked like it was getting outdated, outshined. But they went with it anyhow. And the even funnier part was, the movie was already out, movie was already old, not many people would care for it. Only the people who were waiting for the VHS copy were excited. Oh my goodness, a game! Let's try it out. And if you want statistics, this is the worst game released by Atari and Universal. Because Universal did dabble into the gaming market. Probably like 10, 15 years, 20 years later, they dabbled in with other things, which they did good with those. Because they got better companies, better developers, better timing, and better movies. Sure, E.T. was a good movie, but this game really ruined it. But now that we've said the negatives, let's look at the positives of E.T. There's big positives. At one point, before the whole landfill debuncation, before people started knowing, oh my goodness, there's a landfill of this game? Oh my goodness, they buried this game? Before any of that was out. Like, sure, in '83, yes, they mentioned it, but around like the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of people forgot about it. Atari was slowly coming back around, let's say 2003, 2004-ish. You would see randomly on eBay and Amazon these random E.T. extraterrestrial carts, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, because they would so-called rare. So at one point this game was considered collectible and rare. Were people paying the money? Not so many people. Were many people looking at it? those few collectors who were getting into the Atari. Because at the time, Atari wasn't really big, but at one point, there was a collectible market for it. It was considered one of the most expensive games. Not anymore, but that's your one positive. Positive number 2, right now that so many people are collecting video games, Atari is starting to come up in the collector's market. And the fact that a lot of people know about the landfill, the game was about a $5 to $10 game. As soon as they debunked it and said everything was there, there's still copies of E.T. out there. Now the game's about a $1, $2 game. So for collecting Atari games, for an Atari collector, an Atari lover, an Atari aficionado, or just a young collector who wants every single system of time that has gone, Atari, you must have your E.T. and for now, it's a really reasonable price. Now, the third positive, if you're a fan of the E.T. movie, you gotta have this just to say you have everything E.T. Like, when I say a fan, I don't mean like, say your average schmo that says, I'll put E.T. on my top 10 favorite movies and then just leave it there. No, I mean like a true fan who will buy E.T. toys, E.T. games, E.T. accessories, E.T. wallpapers, E.T. beds, you name it, E.T. this, E.T. that, they'll have. Even the phone, they'll even have the phone that was used in E.T. whatever. That kind of fan. Like the big movie fans like you see like me with Django Unchained or The Dark Knight. I got posters, I got this, I got that. Like those types of fans, they'll pick this up because it's good to be put on their shelf or good to display, or they just want to play it because they're just that much of an E.T. fan. That's another positive because it's only $1 or $2. Now, positive number 4, and this is probably a good positive. Of all your Atari games, when do you ever come across good games? Not as often, not as much. Now, as an Atari collector, a lot of collectors out there want the bad things with Atari because Atari was very known for releasing bad and poorly made games. Now this is something else for the Atari collectors who want to look for the poorly and badly made games. So it's to really step up with the price. Now, the final positive, and this one some of you might not look at it as a positive. Some of you might say, hey, it's okay. Or maybe it shouldn't be up there, but the other positive, it's a Universal game. Universal's a big company. Sure, they messed up. Sure, they had a flaw with the E.T. game. But if you're a collector of Universal memorabilia, this is very cheap and very affordable. Now, the 6th reason. Now, we moved on from the collector's part, like why different collectors should pick it up. Now, the 6th big reason for this game to being a positive is because it's a very simple-minded, early beginners, sort of platforming puzzle style game. For someone who's at the age of like 3, 4, 5, you can't pick up a game like, let me pick out a hard game like Resident Evil. And I picked out this because the remake of Resident Evil is much harder. A 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old probably wouldn't be able to get this right away. Probably would have to learn. A 3-year-old, 4-year-old for sure. 5-year-olds for sure. Or like a game like games like the Grand Theft Auto series. Very tough. Not for you or I, or like a kid like 8, 9, 10-year-old. But I mean like a 3, 4, 5-year-old kid. This is going to be a hard game to start out with. Or even crazier. Let's get crazier. Let's get to the crazy one. Like a Final Fantasy game. What 3-year-old, 4-year-old would understand turn-based Final Fantasy? Sure, Pokemon? Yes. But a Final Fantasy style turn-based, very difficult. So, like, you can't take a kid like 3, 4, 5-year-old and expect them to very first game right off the bat, some of those difficult and popular modern games, you can't take them on to like a PS2 game in the similar field as these. Or an GameCube game, or even an NES game that has some sort of difficulties to it, or an SNES game with some difficulties. You can take them onto the Atari 2600. There are some games that would require you to understand patterns, would require you to understand what to do, what not to do. But E.T., for a kid, this is an amazing first game because it'll get them to feel what it's like to hold a game, what it's like to play a game. Because it's very simple. All they have to do is look at the numbers. They don't know 1,000. They might not have learned that yet. But they can tell that when the number goes backwards, it means that they're running out. Which means they could easily figure this game out. They drop. There's only one button. You just press the button. Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone piece. Go back up. Make sure you don't get caught. Very simple game. That's why I say this is the most important positive. And as I'm thinking right now, as I'm talking, there's actually a seventh and final important positive out to all of these negatives. If you want, and you like, Atari, this is something you gotta have, but, well, as I've already mentioned that, the positive is, it's history. Any gaming collector, even if you could give two fucks about the Atari 2600 system, or Atari altogether, because you think it's too old, or too outdated, or it's something shit. But because it's history, you gotta have this game, regardless. That's where the final, seventh positive, throughout all the negatives. But overall, this game is very bummed down, very negative, very poor, I'd have to say. But I did come out and find a few positives out of the million negativities from this game. You agree with me? You don't agree with me? Comment in the comment section below. Do you like this game? Do you not like the game? Let me know what are your thoughts on it. Maybe this game could hit a top 10, top 100, top 5 worst video games of all time. I don't know. You can let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on E.T. Extraterrestrial? Good, bad? And also, while we're on the subject of comments, comment in the comment section below. What do you think of my new setup? Do you like the microphone idea? If you do, I'll keep it going. You like the sound? That it's a lot better? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you don't like it, let me know. I'll change it up. But just want your opinion on that. Good, bad, microphone idea, not good. Well, and now, as always, enjoy life and keep on collecting.